Hello, hello. Welcome to the coaching hour. Nice to have you here. I'm coming to you from a very grey, wet, overcast, and rainy Benoni, and it's actually beautiful. Never complain about rain in Africa, or so they say. Lovely to have you here. My name is Paul Rotherham. Welcome to this another edition of our podcast, and it's brought to you in proud partnership with Coaches Network South Africa. I'm joined by my friends and colleagues, Mary and Mareka, not only friends, but also very much a part of what we're doing in the coaching space. And it's great to have you with us. Remember, we would invite your comments, your questions, your interaction in the comments section. And afterwards, as well, at the end of this podcast, we'll give you all the contact details. If you perhaps are in the coaching space and you'd like to feature on one of these podcasts, then we'd love to hear from you. We'll give you all those details at the end of this. So, Mareka, nice to have you here because you're going to be introducing our guest for this week.
Yes, thank you so much, Paul. Today we have Haupt Veldmann once again. We had him actually way back when in 2020 when he was still in studio. So it's so nice to have you again today, Haupt. Thank you so much. We're going to talk about a very important topic. But before we get into that, Haupt is a transformation coach and public speaker. And that is a clue to what we're going to talk about today on how to overcome that fear and step into confidence when you do public speaking. So thanks again, Haupt, for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Great. So tell us again, Haupt, why are you so passionate about public speaking?
Well, it all started for me when I was in school. I was scared of being in front of people, and I played sports, and I loved sports so much. And I looked up at these stars. We used to go to Loftus and meet all the sports stars, and they would have this brilliant personality and talking and speaking and interacting. And I'm like, I was amazed. And I looked at them and I'm like, wow, it'll be wonderful to be able to speak to people like that way. And the other time I think was at the convention I went to. The speaker was Tom Hopkins, international sales person. And I just looked at his personality on stage and I want to be like that. I want to do that. And that took me on a journey to find out. I also had a coach. And the one day after a session, he said to me, "Do you know about public speaking?" And I said, "I've got no idea. What are you talking about? I'm just communicating." And he says, "Well, that's where you have certain aspects and things that you do that helps you along the way to look more successful." And that's where the journey started. And also have a passion for helping people to help themselves and to communicate. And that's an important part of daily life.
Absolutely. Now, I must say, in my coaching career, I have encountered many, many people that, besides coaching, also want to learn how to do public speaking or be more confident in front of people. And that is, people on all levels of like management and leadership, even, executive level, that's still nervous to speak in front of people. Now, we're going to talk about 5, proven ways to kind of, up your skills. Now, why is it that public speaking is such a big fear? What's your opinion on that?
Well, public speaking is the number one fear. It's called glossophobia, and the fear of speaking. And that's the same fear that you get when you have a different fears, the fight or flight mode. Now, there is no difference between the two. It's just how you perceive it. You have to, it's all about mindset. You have to change your mindset and decide, how am I going to react? Are you going to start shaking and change your voice? And I'm so scared. People will hear that. But when you change your mindset, and your experience will change. The whole thing behind the fear and anxiety is the energy that's been created within you. And you have to channel that energy towards fight or flight. Now, that's your choice. Not everybody knows that, but today I'm trying to get that point across to help people to think, which way do they want to go? And hopefully you go the fight way. And fighting, that I mean, is the way you respond. And in modern workday places, there's a lot of opportunities where you get to speak impromptu Just would you please introduce this person? Would you please quickly go and speak to that person? Or here's a group. Can you please inform them? That's all parts of public speaking that we do. And most people, they get stuck because they don't know what to say. Nothing wrong with it. I've got notes. Everybody's got notes. And that's how you keep track of where you want to go to. And even if you start making notes in the beginning, just say, this is what I want to say, this is the point I want to get across, and this is what I want people to leave people with. That's one thing, one way to interact. That's the first part of the puzzle.
So can I please ask a question?
Yeah.
You said you're telling us what to do, but how do you do it? How do you shift your mind about public speaking?
There's a couple of ways. The first way is you have to decide for yourself that I am going to do this. So that's the first part. It's a decision that I'm making. I'm not going to try and do it.
Like an
Your
intention.
Yes, I'm going to set my intention. There's a few things that should happen in your mind's eye. You should see yourself standing in front of the people or on a camera and deliver your message. Not word for word, but just a sort of a visual movie playing there where I'm comfortable, I'm happy, I'm smiling, I'm looking at everybody, and I'm giving my message. There's the other part where you decide, you feel that butterflies, that tingly feeling you get all over. Maybe some people like me, I get very excited and I start sweating. I try and control that. And I still today, it happens. But that just means to me that I'm taking it seriously. And that's how the first part's how you get your decision made, your mindset. The other part, and that's the bigger part, is the preparation and also the continuous learning. Do it over and over, practice, improve. There's quite a few techniques that you can use to do that, but in essence is to know what you want to say, get your point across, leave them with a powerful afterthought or action to take. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I have a question here, and I'm sure we're going to learn these tips and tricks from you, which I'm really looking forward to, because I think even for those of us who've been doing this for a long time, as I have, you never know everything and you can always learn. So I'm looking forward to hearing those. But a question at the onset is, how much of one's ability is natural and a gift that you are born with versus taught and learned behavior and a skill that you develop in your experience?
That all depends on your background. If you grew up in a family where everybody's extroverts and they enjoy being with people and talking to people, interacting, then yes, you're going to have a more advantage of a natural ability to speak to people. But everything can be learned. It's going to take time, but everything can be learned. So for certain people, yes, it comes easy. They don't have to think about it. It's just the way that they were brought up. It's their natural talent that they got from their parents or the influences they were exposed to while growing up. And that just makes for sometimes for a better speaker or a person that acts naturally in those kind of environments.
I'll tell you what I've always found very interesting is in the radio world, the number of presenters I've worked with and have met over the years, where in a studio where it's literally you and a microphone, you're not in front of an audience, you can really do well and have this persona, whether you've put it on or whether it's who you really are is neither here nor there. But put that very same person on a stage, whether it's 1,000 people or 50 people, and it can be a completely different experience. So there's something to be said for that being in front of a group. And to this day, and I've been doing this literally 40 years, to this day, I still have nerves when I step out, no matter how many people I'm in front of, when I step out in front of an audience, I still get the goosebumps, the butterflies, feel nervous, and it takes a few minutes to settle. So I think something to probably make clear is that that's all perfectly normal. If you're super nervous in the main part, it's a good thing.
Definitely. It is a good thing. It shows that you are still interested. you still perceive yourself as the person who you are, but there's also mindsets that happens on that part for certain people. People are used to public speaking, speaking in front of an audience, two or more people as an audience, 50 people, 100,000, 5,000. There's a certain mindset that you have to get yourself into. And I remember the first time I appeared on your show, in the radio show in studio, I had this vision in my head of we're in public, but it's only the four of us in the studio. But whoever else is listening outside, there could be thousands, millions of people listening, and depending on how or at what stage they tune in, they will hear a message. And that sort of got me nervous. I'm like, wow, I'm used to speaking in front of people. I can see their faces, I can see their reactions, I can react to their reactions, I can pause and stop and explain myself. Whereas over the air, you can't. So that's quite a different thing. And where certain people get the word is excited, is they think to themselves is what if I mess up? What will happen? And that's where the fear started or starts. So you have to shift your mind from what if I mess up? Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know what I'm saying. I don't know what you're going to say next or ask next. But you have to think for yourself, saying, what if I help just one person today? Then I won. And that's the mindset that you have to take on.
So, help take us through those 5 steps. If someone really knows, that's listening and they want to become more confident in speaking, where can they start? Maybe if they can remember these 5 steps and practice them, with repetition and get better and better. Take us through that, please.
Definitely. Okay, we have already started with the first step, and that's getting over the fear. And a mindset for a business owner or a CEO executive that you can also take on is you can say to yourself, look like an affirmation. So if you think I'm not a natural speaker, you have to remind yourself that number one, you've got experience, you've got skills, you've led teams, you've made tough decisions. And this is just another conversation. So I'm having a conversation, I'm telling stories. You can tell stories. That's what it's also all about, but that's other discussion. So the brain is literally wired for fear. And the brain is wired for fear. And that is one thing that keeps certain people back. And the way that you can portray that, like I said in the beginning, is you can switch the fear and switch your mindset to, I'm excited. I'm excited to change one person in this room. And that will help you to perceive yourself as telling a story, just having a conversation. So when you're next feeling like that kind of feeling, just breathe deep, take in a few deep breaths, and just say, I'm excited. I'm going to tell my story. So that's the second part. And then the third part, some people get stuck in that what if loop. And how to escape it is just to, when your mind spirals out of control, just think it, bring it back. Nothing else is going to happen apart from you pausing, taking a deep breath, maybe check your notes, and carry on from there. That's just a normal pause. And there's also a power in the pause that you get taught in public speaking. There's nothing wrong with keeping quiet for a bit. That enables your audience to also catch up to what you've said. And it gives you an opportunity to think of, what am I going to say next? Or just get your mindset in order. So what if you forget your words? Look at your notes. And that thought of, what if I think I'm incompetent? Well, don't let that loop run. It's going to run wild and going to take you out of focus for the message that you want to get across. Rather think, what if I give a perfect presentation and an impactful talk? That'll get the point across. And people will look at you. They don't look to judge you. They look to get information from you. They look to get leadership from you at that moment from stage, because being on stage in front of somebody gives you a certain aspect of authority, because you're standing in front of all the attention is on you. And people would love to hear what you're going to say, but they don't know what you're going to say next.
You've touched on something there, Hop, that I think is quite important, and that is no one has any idea what you're going to say, firstly. And secondly, we tend to be our worst critics. So, where you leave a stage and have all of these things running through your mind where this came out wrong, you forgot to say that, you didn't do this. In 99.9% of cases, in my experience, no one else has even picked up on those things. Yet you're running them through your mind as if everybody's noticed this. And it's simply not true. People's expectations generally, and it's not a bad thing, are way less than what our own expectations are.
Definitely. Thanks, Paul. And that's how you shape your thinking and your steps forward. And that leads us to the next point, is the self-doubt and authority that you have to adopt. You know, like a CEO mindset in speaking. And when you're at that level, you've got a different mindset. And when you step on stage, it should still feel different. You need that excitement, because that changes the perspective of how you're going to get your point across. There's obviously a difference when you're in a boardroom or speaking over a video. That's also something that changes the dynamics, like we mentioned earlier. Speaking on radio and speaking in front of people, it's two different aspects, and that's two different mindsets. But the important part behind everything is preparation. Since the day that I've spoken, we set the dates, I've been preparing myself. I've taken many hours. I've just sat down, looked at my notes, and visualized myself. What am I going to say? Am I saying everything correctly? No, not at all. Am I telling everything that I wanted to say? No, not at all. This reminds me, I've got a surprise at the end, so we'll have a quick chat about that. But that's how you have to perceive yourself, is when you step on stage, you bring that authority with you. Yes, you've got to not think you're better than the people you're speaking to, but you've got to think that I'm here to deliver a message, get the point across. And yes, people would love to know your viewpoint, because we can be on the same topic. Paul, you've got experience. I've got experience, but you see things different than what I see. And we might not always agree, but you get my point and I get your point. And that's the sort of thing we have to get ourselves over in the thinking process. Yes.
Sorry. It makes me think of years ago when I was much younger. I was in my late 20s, and I had to present something that I discovered. I did a survey in the bank, and I was so nervous to present it. I wanted to give it to somebody else to read it out and present it on my behalf. No, you're going to do it. And the thing is, I was so nervous and scared, and eventually I had to take a tranquilizer. And now it's listening to you, it brings back those memories. So the things that I feared, it was because I had no confidence to speak, and I didn't feel like I was worthy of speaking. And I had this inferiority complex because I wasn't a manager. I was just a clerk. So I think all those little things creep in to break down your confidence and give you self-doubt.
That's 100% true. And that reminds me to last week, I spoke to one of my coaches, and he said to me, when you get to that stage, just step back and say, am I still in the game? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I still in the game? Am I playing this game? And just maybe sit back and think of, how can I proceed forward? How am I going to change this? What can I do? Maybe I need a coach. Maybe I need structure. And I think that's the biggest part, is people think in the beginning, oh, it's easy. I can do that. I'll make a few notes. And then when you get to that situation, I've been there myself in the early stages of my career. I can't tell you what I even said. I had to look at my notes to remember what it was, because I just saw this massive blackness and I couldn't remember. And then my mentor at that stage said to me, listen, you need to restructure. let's sit down and let's work on a few things. And that's where my journey started. And it got easier. Like Paul said, you don't know everything. I'm not a contest speaker. I'm not those kind of things. I focus on helping people to move forward. And that's where I'm good at. I'll leave the rest to somebody that's good at it. And that's how we need to perceive it. How I use certain aspects and failures in my life to move forward as a stepping stone. Let's say, for instance, that you weren't that good at that stage, but somebody saw your potential and then they said, okay, let's work on that. And you got promoted and then again promoted. And each step of the promotion leaves you with a different challenge and you have to overcome the challenge. And that's how life works. Are you still in the game?
Mm. I think the important thing is, even though you don't feel like you're a born speaker, it doesn't come natural. It's something that you can develop. And I think each one of us, had, a few tools, that we use to help us overcome it. Because I remember I was so scared to speak in front of people as well. I still remember, when I was doing my studies, these big auditorium where all the students sit, about 200 students, then I would really admire the lecturer in front of the class. And I think, but how did I get the confidence? Like, what makes them, so confident? Because just walking, down to the front desk to put down my assignment, I would look, over my shoulder to the whole crowd of students. I would get so panicked to think, if I have to speak now, I'll die. So I really had to overcome that. And a few things that you said also reminded me how I overcome it. Like, for example, you said feeling excited. I think, I heard it somewhere that that anxiety and excitement feels exactly the same. It's the same energy. It feels the same. It's just in the way that you interpret it. So the moment that I heard that, instead of thinking, I'm nervous, I said, no, I'm excited. So I'm convincing myself that this feeling that I'm feeling is excitement. And then obviously also the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. So you don't run away from it. Keep doing it, practicing it. And obviously doing public speaking classes did help tremendously. And I would suggest that for anyone, just to put yourself out of your comfort zone, at least. But it's a
Definitely,
journey.
yeah. Definitely. It's getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's where the excitement happens. That's where the change happens. And a lot of what you said now brings me actually to my fifth point. It's people perceive their audience want them to fail, but when in actual fact they want you to win. And it's a myth. It's a myth that your audience wants you to fail because they are there to cheer you on. Yes, not everybody's gonna, root
Like
for
you.
you and like you and like what you say because they've got a different viewpoint from that, which is 100% fine. You're there to get your point across. And if it's not the point for the one person, maybe you change that one person that you meant to speak to. But in essence, every audience wants their speaker to succeed. When I sit at occasions listening to people speak and I see them struggle, I'm like, oh man, I wish there was something I could do. But you also have to go through the struggle to know the hardship and to break through that fear in the end. And usually what I try and do afterwards, I go speak to the person and I build them up and I say, listen, well done. I like it. And they will go into all the negative points. I said, yes, you know what? Nobody knows what should have happened. You just made it happen.
Exactly.
So when you have that mindset, you have to change it into the people are here to see me speak and they want me to win. And use that energy to channel it into the fight in a good fight way so that I can move forward, get my point across. Yeah. And you want to focus and impress upon the people, not impress them, impress upon.
Yeah. Now, Paul, just a quick question to you, because you are used to public speaking and that was your career in terms of radio. How did you overcome that first nerves when you just started?
Gosh, that's a difficult question because I was literally 9 years old when I started Rotherham Radio in the back of our combi going on holiday. And I would speak as if I was on the radio and come up with all of these ideas and talk to my mom and my dad and my brothers. So as Haupt mentioned earlier, I think the longer you've been doing something, the more comfortable you become. So radio per se for me was just something that I always knew I wanted to do. From when I was 9, 10 years old, I always used to refer to the little man in the speaker. I think the challenge for me was then moving that to a place where I was comfortable in front of an audience. And I think that probably took a little getting used to, but I was also lucky in that it was a gradual process. So at school, I did public speaking, I did drama, and so gradually you find yourself on a stage in front of your classmates, maybe 20 or 30 people, and then you find yourself on a stage in front of the whole grade and then the entire school. And slowly but surely, I think you do become used to speaking in front of more and more people. I'll never forget, I was a prefect at Benoni High, and we had the most wonderful headmaster, Mr. Brian Lotter. And I remember before school at the assembly, the prefects had to take turns reading the announcements. And it was my turn to read the announcements one morning. And I went up with this announcement book, and I had the microphone in front of me, which went out on this PA system. And I remember speaking, and it was just this deafening boom. And the joke from the principal there and then was, he said, "Good grief, young man," he said, "you don't even need a microphone." And little things like that, I think, are subtle ways of you becoming more comfortable in what you're doing, because I was nervous standing in front of this entire school. But to take the plus out of it, to take the good and the positives. And I think it's a gradual process. It's small steps. I still feel nervous now. I don't ever feel nervous on radio anymore, oddly enough. That I don't have any nerves. But in front of an audience, excuse me, I do feel some nerves when I get on a stage, and those nerves do dissipate. I find that, and I'm sure all of us, we've all spoken in front of people, I find the ice-breaking moment, that first 3, 4, 5 minutes is always the worst. Introducing myself, getting a feel for the audience. And I think once that dust has settled, and you realize people are people. We're all people. Nobody is better than anyone else. Obviously, you need to have some degree of preparation. And I think that is a massive help, is knowing what you're going to be talking about. Don't arrive on a stage unprepared, even though sometimes you are thrown into the deep end without having much time to plan. So yeah, I think be comfortable with being nervous. Those nerves do settle. Don't judge yourself based on how you see yourself, because I can tell you now, your level is up here, and most people are not thinking that they're going to see you at that level, or they don't perceive that you're going to be this perfect speaker. And making mistakes, I think, is human. For many years on the radio, I prided myself in, excuse me, never umming and ahhing. Sorry, I got a frog in the throat. And I remember I would listen to the radio, and I still do, and I would hear how many presenters and ah. And these are professional people who do it for a living. And I remember priding myself in the fact that I'm never going to and ah on the radio. And I remember the first time I did, I was at Haupt Veldmann. So annoying. And I can tell you now, not a single person who was listening to that show, and even now, if you're watching this podcast or listening to this recording, you very seldom, if somebody does it excessively, you'll pick up on it. And there's nothing worse, I think, than when somebody uses these crutch phrases all the time. But generally, people are very tolerant. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And I think to have the ability to speak or to improve your skill set is just a massive tool in your armory. It really is, because very few jobs now don't include that in some way or another. You need to be able to speak, and ideally speak in front of a group of people.
That's very true.
That's all about techniques and tools. And then number one, mindset. There's one thing, practice as well. Yes, there's one thing that I see happens to keynote speakers. They've got this one specific keynote, they stick to it, and for 10, 20 years, they just stick to that. And then your audience gets bored. So if you do something like that, try and incorporate new stories. And you know what? Public speaking, and speaking for that matter, is all about stories. My one mentor told me, "You like to use a lot of analogies." I said, "Yes, depends on the situation. But mainly I enjoy stories." And everybody's told a story here today. Everybody told a story here today of the past, their experience. And that is what it's all about. That's public speaking, because now I can relate. I've been in that situation where I was so nervous, I can't remember what I had to say or needed to say. I remember the first part where I had to be an MC at my sister's wedding. Oh, 10 minutes before everything started, I got this list of people that let us know I'm not coming, I'm not going to be there. And I had to change my whole story. That's where I had to learn to get, to change,
That
to adapt, to change what I want to say, my thoughts. But we got there in the end. And I'm going to have another opportunity at my brother-in-law's wedding, so I'm going to improve again on that.
Yeah.
I like what you said. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No, you can go, Paul.
No, about adapting stories and keynote speakers who deliver the same speech over and over. And I think what's interesting there is 99.9% of their audience is different every time. But there is that small percentage that gets to see someone. And I've seen, you're spot on, Haupt. I've seen some of these world speakers, the big names, and you have a look at some of their talks, TED Talks, and presentations on YouTube, and each one can be identical. But for the audience that was there on that night, on that day, it was the first time they heard it. So I suppose the logic there is don't now reinvent the wheel for the sake of that 0.01% of the people.
Definitely. But to just add on updated stories, I used to teach public speaking in schools and every year I had a new group. And the teachers there would say, listen, every year we're learning something new because your stuff, your principles are the same, but your stories and your actions are different. I said, yes, because every year I change something. I read a book, I go to a course, I go and see what someone else does. And I take bits and pieces and incorporate that and I pay it forward. And that's the difference that you need to do in progressing is don't do the same thing over and over. That's the rule of insanity. You've got to change a bit. And that helps a lot in progressing and building your speaking career or just a presentation career at work.
CDP.
Definitely.
I missed that. What was that, Mary?
CDP, Continuous Development Programming.
Thank you for explaining. I didn't know that.
Very important. So how do you help people to help themselves? I quite like that. In what aspects, because you're also a coach yourself, what is your niche areas and what do you help, people with in terms of transformation? And yeah, tell us where they then can get hold of you.
Oh, I love it. Thanks so much. I mentioned I've got a surprise at the end.
Yes.
We've in Pretoria we've combined a few people and we've the mastermind behind everything is I don't know if you will know him, Benny Keane. He started a company. It's called Inspirational Symposium. And what it is we aim to have a platform for South Africans that's our version of TEDx. And we will have short, powerful talks and sort of have you under fire, but don't scrutinize you, teach you. And also in the background, we'll have a networking component where people will come and give their message, because that's a double part of that. So you will get coaching, you will get the mindset part of speaking. And the difference between Benny and myself is I went through all the technical stuff and he went through the real world stuff to teach everything on his own. And so we're intertwining that and taking all the best parts and putting that forward. That's just a small part of what Insposium is all about. But it is about people getting together, building a network of like-minded, trusted individuals to move forward, build business, change the world in our circle of influence. Because if I have 10 people and those 10 have 10, the pay it forward story. That's how we are going to proceed with that. And I would like to invite everybody when you get to that part, let me get to that, to sign up. We're still in pre-launch, as they say. If you would like to get on the mailing list, the early mailing list, we've already got a few things together. We're still working out some details. There's a book diary that we're working on. Benny is working on as well, and we're busy putting that out to sort of plan your goals for your year. Take your yearly goals to your monthly goals, to your weekly goals, to your daily goals, to your hourly goals. There's a specific mindset and progress system that you go through that will help you to focus more on what you have to do to reach your goals, and that you can use in everything that you do. So we have this group. We coach, we teach, we help each other. It's for professionals. It's basically for everyone, but we focus on people that need that help in the professional industry. Coaches, speakers. I can always learn from anyone else as well. I'm always coachable. I'm open to learn. I would love to see what else someone else does. But if you would like to be part of this, or at least hear from us, I want you to go to is.gd and then /INSPOSIUM, M for mother, Insposium. I'll put it on the video details as well,
Yes,
and send it to you.
please. I will put that on the description, when our video on YouTube, obviously, that people are watching, and on Spotify, we can put that link. It's just easier. And then they can click on there, I guess, and subscribe, and then I'm sure they'll get the information from there.
Wonderful, thank you. And so if you have a story to tell, if you have anything to tell, if you want to come and teach and give us your view of what's available, get in touch with us and we'll gladly speak and see how we can work together.
Nice.
So Haupt, just to jump in there very quickly, and I know we're out of time, but am I understanding that this is a platform that you are creating for people who would like to speak and share their experiences? So you might have an afternoon or an evening session where you have a number of speakers, and not only are you enjoying what they're saying, but you're also offering some critique. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's a whole platform. That's a whole buy, sell, interact. That's a whole business world on its own. As we progress and everything has become clear, I will send out details to everybody, and it's available to everybody. We would like to do it in the whole of South Africa. We're starting in, let's say, Gauteng, and from there we'll progress. And obviously it'll branch off into certain smaller groups, but there's a whole mindset that's behind this to sort of, we've taken what works in all the different aspects and put it into one thing and say, okay, this is how we're going to progress.
Sounds very interesting. Awesome.
There's a main part behind it as well, to get everybody involved in the program to write a book. And you would know yourself, if you've got a book, you've got some form of authority, and that's your message. And when you do, I'm going to do that as well. That's part of my coaching and training that I'm going through as well. And I'm going to put out a book. I'm going to sell that book. I'm going to talk about the book. I'm going to do that until I get the next book. And then I'm going to do that the same again. The platform is also geared to sell that book. There's a whole group of affiliates that will go out and sell the book. And that's how we build on.
Sounds exciting. And those details we will make sure we post here in the comments section as you're watching this video. Thank you so much, Haupt. We appreciate you being with us today. I think we've all learned a lot from that. Mary and Mareka, yes?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that platform.
Thank you, yes.
Got lots of stories to tell.
Wonderful. That's what we're here for. Stories is the name of the game.
And on that note, if you have a story to share, we would love to hear from you as well. We really aim for this not to be a one-way street. It's a two-way street. It's a conversation. We're not talking at you. We're here to converse with you, and there's a big difference. So if you do have some inputs, if you have your thoughts that you'd like to share, and as I said at the beginning of this recording, if you would like to perhaps even be featured as a coach, we've got coaches from all walks of life who have appeared on the Coaching Hour. So we're open to your ideas and your content. All you have to do is be available and ready to speak for 15, 20 minutes, perhaps a bit longer if you feel that way. And we'd love to engage with you. So all those details will be on the various platforms where you're able to watch this. The Coaching Hour podcast, proudly brought to you in partnership with Coaches Network South Africa. Thank you for joining us for this edition, and we hope to see you for the next one.